Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Trading 101 on 6++. It is I, Tom Very Lowest of Men, here, back once again to talk trading units with you. And today, it's the Space Marines edition. Obviously, we gave a couple of nods to them in the early videos, but I felt like it was quite fun to dive in depth on some of the tools that Marines have. And spoilers, there's a ton of them. For playing trading games, trading tricks, shenanigans, and the like in 40k at the moment. Before we dive into it, please do hit the old like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. If you want to sign up as a YouTube member and support the channel that way, we'd really, really appreciate it as well. Fantastic. Okay, so let's take a look at Space Marines. I think in general, obviously, Space Marines are a more elite and durable army than some, which means that trading options are sometimes at a little bit of a premium. But actually, in recent changes and with recent tweaks on data sheets, there's a whole ton of different ways that you can play trading games and tricks in Space Marines. I'm not covering every single one today. That is how many there are. But what I've tried to do is pick out options that you have for all of the different sort of special flavors of Space Marine, the Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, etc. Look at those, the premier tools that they have, and then think of a few of the standard units as well that just any Marine faction can get good use out of as a trading piece. So I'm going to start off with the current, glorious big bads of the meta, the Ultramarines. And their trading piece is an interesting one because it is, in fact, a Primarch. And that is this fella here, Rabute Guilliman. So Guilliman is very, very good in Ultramarines for getting trades started and causing issues. He has the ability to be lone opt when he is near to friendly units, which helps him massively. Means that the enemy is already, if they want to deal with Guilliman, they're going to have to get close to the rest of your army, which means you're going to be able to counterattack really, really effectively. He's a very tough, durable piece. He's got a good in-run, good toughness, good wounds. He himself is very dangerous in combat if you want to try and engage with him. And then the kicker, of course, is that the first time he dies on a 3-up, he gets back up. So if you've been watching the series, you'll know that ticks a lot of boxes for us, right? It's anti-trading. The first time they actually try and deal with him, he's not even going to necessarily be dead. That's a massive deal. Secondly, the lone up draws the enemy close, so the cost of engagement with Guilliman is really high, which means it's a good trade for you in terms of resources. They have to commit a lot of points near to your army in order to even start killing Guilliman. That is really, really effective. Obviously, Guilliman brings a whole ton of other things to the army as well. So you'll often see him used as a sort of mid-game engagement piece and trade piece to try and get the sort of, fatal engagements of the game going, whilst offering, his Oath Bust and other things as well. But yeah, Guilliman having a hell of a year so far in competitive 40k, and I definitely recommend using him in your games if you're an Ultramarines player at this moment in time. Let's move it over to the Space Wolves. Slightly more conventional trading piece for the Space Wolves, and that is the Wolfen. Now, Wolfen, very speedy, very punchy. They got a sort of improvements on their weapons in the data slate a little while ago, so they have a decent sort of marine killing output weapons. They are deceptively durable with a good in-run save. And the crucial thing with Wolfen as well is that they have 4-up fight on death. So this makes engaging Wolfen in a melee matchup really difficult. If you want to go and dig Wolfen out, there's a very real risk they're going to take your trading piece with them. So I think Bricks of Wolfen are a very, very powerful tool in a Space Wolves army to sort of force heavy engagement and then press the attack if they're not dealt with. So wonderful. You can use them in 5s or 10s. I think they're really, really nice and definitely very, very effective at what they do. And they work in a bunch of the different detachments that we see people using Space Wolves in. So very good. I think they did take some points hit, so not quite as efficient as they used to be, but still an exceptional trading piece with a lot of application. Our next two, I would say, are not conventional trading armies in the same way. So if we think about the Dark Angels first, and I've gone for the Inner Circle Companions here. Dark Angels are, in many ways, like a stoic, arrive at the midboard and stay there kind of army in application. That tends to be their way. You can use like JPIs and other conventional marine pieces to try and do a bit of early trading. But one of the big tools they have is the Brick of Inner Circle Companions with a Judicia. Now, this means that you've got a very dangerous but quite fragile unit with fights first and a very good volume of attacks that can be switched up in different ways depending on the profile of the enemy target. And ultimately, this makes it very, very difficult for a lot of armies to engage with. So This is a commitment forcing piece. Once again, in order to actually deal with this, you're going to have to push quite a lot of stuff. It's very difficult to send small units and have any kind of impact before, you'll be killed before you even get to strike. So I think this is a really useful tool in the Dark Angels toolkit, and it helps them to play the game very, very effectively. I think ultimately, Dark Angels themselves, as I say, they're often more about jamming out the Deathwing Knights, Inner Circle Companions, those kinds of units, and surviving. But this is a really important tool in doing that, just because the sort of counterattack potential is massive, and it can invite pressure in a way that other pieces can't, and lock down a secure part of the board in a way that other pieces can't. So highly recommend the Inner Circle Companion brick with the Judicia in a Dark Angels army. Next up, we've got another army that doesn't trade per se in quite the same way, and that is the Black Templars. Now, I think there was a reasonable shout for Sword Brethren, although I actually prefer Sword Brethren as a big hammer unit with Hellbreak these days. So what I've gone for here is another sort of stodgy, pressure-inviting piece, and that is the Crusader brick. So in Black Templars, you can have a large, mixed-profile brick of warriors with a feel no pain, marine bodies, obviously potential access to Armor of Contempt in the Crusaders. They've got the neophytes in the unit, which means that they have the ability to essentially pass off wounds to something that's not very important for the output and threat of the unit. And they can have access to advance and charge as well. So Crusader bricks in a Templars army often act as that kind of anvil onto which the enemies they're going to be forced to deal with it. If you shove a Crusader brick in the middle, they're going to have to engage you, or you're going to get more primary. That's going to give you a lot more potential for counter-attacking with the rest of your army. So again, we've got two tools here for these armies that are more about the pressure you can invite and the space and opportunities that gives to the rest of your unit. If for quite, in both cases, quite expensive elite chapters that are a little bit lighter on assets. So I think that for me is probably the main one, as I see it at the moment, for the Black Templars. So ultimately, we're going to be moving to think about some of the sort of generic all-rounder pieces now. But the first one, we've still got to think about Blood Angels. And the honest answer for Blood Angels is that freaking anything is a trade piece at the moment, right? I think all the stuff we've talked about previously, intercessors with jump packs are very, very good as trade pieces. But actually, because of the buffs, particularly from the Liberation Assault Group detachment, any unit can punch up really radically in Blood Angels. So the one I'm going to highlight is actually a very good all-round, all-purpose trading unit at the moment that I highly recommend for Marines of all stripes, but it works particularly well in Blood Angels. And that is the Humble Blood Angels Incursor. Now, Incursors have a good volume of sort of combat knife attacks, which is very, very, very nice. And they also have access to a melter mine, which does a little bit of damage to an enemy unit through mortal wounds as well, which again makes them more flexible in how they apply damage to a wider range of targets. So they can punch up quite deceptively into a whole number of things. But then the kicker on top of that is that a unit hit by Incursor's bolter shots then is sort of suffering from the rest of your army getting +1 to hit against it in the shooting phase. This is absolutely phenomenal. This is a huge force multiplying buff, and it means that in those early stages of the game, when Incursors are going out and fighting and trading on the flanks on the objectives, they can also be tagging things with +1 to hit, which then means your Vindicators can be hitting on 2s, Predators hitting on 2s, all sorts of supporting shooting, Inceptors dropping down, super, super accurate. So they, I think, offer so much I'd say in Marines of all flavors, but particularly in Blood Angels, because they are simultaneously a very solid trading unit and a force multiplier. And that is really, really nice. So I think Incursors are having a phenomenal moment. They've got a scout move as well, so very, very useful, can get into position very happily. They are just all-round superstars and really, really worth looking at in Marine armies at this moment in time. Got a couple of smaller shout-outs for some of the other Marine units that were given recent buffs. The first one is the Humble Invader ATV. Now, this is a very obnoxious little piece. It's basically a sort of land speeder bike. It's tough. It's got a decent number of wounds. It's got decent shooting. You can have it with a melter gun, so it's got this surprise up spike of damage into vehicles, potentially, or elite troops. And it's dirt cheap. I think it's 60 points at this moment in time. So these are a brilliant trading piece purely because it's a sort of mini vehicle chassis, which means that a lot of the lighter trading units of other armies simply can't hurt it enough, which again means you're going to get opponents sticking tanks out to try and clear it, sending elite infantry to try and clear it, which then again is going to give you fantastic opportunities to retaliate with your real weapons, your real tanks, your real guns, and your real combat. So they're cheap enough that they can do actions very happily. You can shove them out on points very happily. If you lose them, doesn't matter. Very, very cheap and cheerful. Again, a wonderful all-purpose unit for Space Marines right now. One of the many reasons that Space Marines are having a really, really good time at this moment. Finally, and I think it's worth a shout out, we're starting to see them creep up in use a little bit in a couple of detachments, and that is the humble Outrider. Now, the Outrider is a little bit clunky to use on a lot of terrain setups, but ultimately is a speedy unit that has got a significant buff to its damage now on the charge, so it's very capable of clearing through marine type units in skirmishes. It's got some bolter fire, and again, much like the ATV, for its price, there's an obnoxious amount of wounds here, right? Decent toughness, 4 wounds, 3 up save. Slightly irritating for a lot of the kinds of cheap throwaway assets that want to play the early exchanges to actually deal with. I think that's really, really effective. So Outriders, we're seeing them being used again. They're very effective in Blood Angels where they benefit from the strength buffs. They are very effective. I'm seeing them used now in some of the Dark Angels detachments as well. You can obviously use them in Stormlance. And so they are, I say, a little bit left field, but actually I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the effort involved for an opponent in actually shifting Outriders and the things that need to get out and go and do the work in order to lift a unit like this now. And I think the balance for Marines at the moment is finding these cheap, cheerful out the front units, getting a good balance between your real threat, your real damage, and these throwaway pieces. And I think there's just so many options still to cover in the Marine Codex and in the Marine data sheets right now as well. So I'd be very interested to hear what you guys think. Let me know what's been working for you as a Marine player in the trading game. Any other tricks and tools that you've found that are particularly effective at getting the opponent to come and play and get that trading game started. And of course, let me know if there's other things you'd like to see covered in the Trading 101 series. I would be more than happy to make it for you. And I would be very, very happy to get stuck into that very soon. As ever, thank you so much for supporting 6++. We're having a fantastic year. We're really, really enjoying ourselves. Excited to see where it all goes. Do hit that like and subscribe. Do leave a comment if you haven't already. And again, if you want to sign up and become one of our many, many, many YouTube members helping us get where we want to go and all our ambitious plans for the future, we'd love to have you on board as well. Fantastic. Right, that's it for me today. Lowest of Men out. Bye-bye.